The council chamber of Vex Prime hummed, with the low buzz of 1,000 alien dignitaries all gathered to witness what they believed would be another routine military demonstration. I adjusted my optical sensors and leaned forward in my observation pod, my 4 manipulator appendages tapping nervously against the armrest. My name is Krellul, Senior Military Analyst for the Galactic Defense Consortium, and in my 300 cycles of service I thought I had seen everything the universe had to offer. I was catastrophically wrong. The chamber's massive view screens flickered to life, displaying the barren moon of Tertius 9, a desolate rock we used for weapons testing. Today's demonstration involved the latest Vexian plasma cannon, capable of vaporizing a mountain in seconds. Standard stuff, yawn-inducing. Really, but the real show, the part that had everyone's mandibles clicking with barely suppressed laughter, was the human representative standing awkwardly near the council podium. Her name was Lieutenant Maya Torres, and she looked absolutely ridiculous. While every other species present wore gleaming power armor or sophisticated energy shields, this human stood in what appeared to be leather and metal plates, like something excavated from a primitive burial site. But that wasn't even the funny part. Oh no, the truly hilarious bit was the weapon strapped to her back, a sword, an actual physical metal sword. Is that wheezed Ambassador Quillax beside me, his breathing sacs inflating with mirth. Is that actually forged steel? It appears so, I replied, fighting to keep my own amusement in check. Humans had only joined the Galactic Federation 15 cycles ago, and they were still adapting to modern warfare, but bringing a blade to a military demonstration, that was either breathtaking ignorance or comedy gold. Commander Vortz, a towering Craxian with scales that shimmered like oil slicks, approached the podium with the kind of swagger that comes from commanding 3 fleet divisions. His voice boomed through the translation matrix, each word dripping with condescension. Esteemed delegates, today we test not only Vexian technology, but also evaluate the contributions of our, shall we say, newer members. He gestured toward Maya with one massive claw. Lieutenant Torres has requested permission to participate in today's field exercise. Apparently humanity believes they have something valuable to offer. The chamber erupted in chittering, buzzing, and various forms of alien laughter. Maya's face remained impassive, though I noticed her jaw tightened slightly, her dark eyes, so strange in their binocular simplicity, tracked across the room with an intensity that made my scales itch. Tell me, Lieutenant, Vortz continued, his tone sickeningly sweet, what exactly do you plan to accomplish with your antique? Maya stepped forward, her boots clicking against the polished floor. When she spoke, her voice was steady, almost bored. I plan to complete the objective, Commander, same as everyone else. With a sword, Vortex made a show of examining his data tablet. A weapon that requires you to be within what 2m of your target, while the rest of us engage from kill 'em away with directed energy weapons. Sometimes, Maya said slowly, as if explaining to a particularly dim child, the old ways work just fine. The laughter intensified. Even I couldn't help the amused hiss that escaped my respiratory slits. This was going to be a disaster, and part of me almost felt sorry for the human. Almost. The mission parameters were simple enough. Teams would be dropped onto Tertius 9 to secure a fortified bunker complex, controlled by automated defense systems. First team to breach the central vault and retrieve the data core would win. Bragging rights, and more importantly, preferred consideration for the upcoming deep space expedition contracts. Billions of credits were at stake. 6. Teams prepared in the staging area. The Vexians brought their new powered exo suits, each one worth more than a small planet's GDP. The Craxians deployed their elite shock troops, genetically modified for maximum aggression. Quilly sent their Hivemind tactical unit, 40 individuals operating as one consciousness. The other teams were similarly equipped with the finest technology the galaxy had to offer, and then there was Maya standing alone, checking the edge of her ridiculous sword. Human called Captain Xylo of the Vexian contingent. Are you certain you don't want to borrow some proper equipment? I have a spare plasma rifle. It's only 3 models old, but it should work for someone of your skill level. Maya looked up from her blade inspection and smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. I'm good, thanks. Wouldn't want to show you up with unfamiliar gear. The drop ships loaded up and we observers settled in to watch the feeds. Multiple camera drones would track each team's progress. I pulled up Maya's personal feed on my primary screen, mostly because watching her inevitable failure would at least be entertaining. The ships descended through Tertius 9's thin atmosphere and deposited their teams at various entry points around the bunker complex. Immediately, the automated defenses activated. Turret guns swiveled. Targeting lasers painted the rocky terrain, and combat drones swarmed from hidden launch bays. The Vexian team moved first, their exosuits absorbing the initial barrage of plasma fire as they advanced behind portable shield generators. Textbook assault tactics. Boring but effective. The Craxians simply charged their enhanced physiology, allowing them to shrug off impacts that would vaporize lesser beings. The Kilari split into precise formations, each subunit covering the others with synchronized fire. Maya ran not toward cover, not toward a tactical position. She just ran straight at the nearest turret emplacement, her sword still sheathed on her back, her body weaving between energy blasts with movements that seemed more like instinct than training. What is she doing? Quillnex gasped. That's suicide. Maybe humans have a death wish as part of their culture, I suggested, unable to tear my eyes from the screen. I've heard they engage in recreational activities that would kill most species. Maya closed the distance to the turret. In seconds that felt like hours, plasma bolts scorched the ground around her feet, superheated air creating visible distortion waves just when it seemed impossible for her to dodge another shot. She dropped into a slide, her body skimming beneath the turret's firing arc. In one fluid motion she drew her sword, and that's when everything got weird. The blade began to glow, not like a heated metal glow, not like an energy field. This was something else entirely. A pulsing luminescence that seemed to shift between colors that shouldn't exist, hues that made my optical sensors recalibrate repeatedly. The light spread from the sword's core, following patterns etched along its length. Patterns I suddenly realized weren't decorative, they were circuitry. Impossibly ancient circuitry. Maya swung the blade upward as she rose from her slide, and the weapon cut through the turret's armored housing. Like it was made of smoke, no. Resistance, no sparks, the turret simply split apart, its halves falling away as the glowing edge passed through. Did you see that? I demanded, my appendages gesticulating wildly. Did anyone else see that? The chamber had gone quiet. All eyes, optical sensors, and various other perception organs were locked on Maya's feed. She didn't stop. 2 combat drones swooped toward her, their weapons cycling up. Maya pivoted her sword, tracing an arc through the air, and that impossible light extended from the blade. Like a cutting plane, both drones fell, cleanly bisected, their components scattering across the rocky ground. What technology is that? Vortesh growled, his earlier smugness evaporating. Humans don't have access to molecular dissociation fields. That's not molecular dissociation, wheezed the Trilaxian science minister from somewhere in the back. The energy signature is all wrong. It's not reading as technology at all. Maya had reached the bunker's outer wall. The other teams were still 50 m from their respective entry points, bogged down by defensive fire. She placed her palm against the reinforced duralloy barrier, and for a moment nothing happened. Then she drew her sword back and thrust it forward. The blade sank into the wall like it was butter. She dragged it downward, then across, then up, carving a door through 6 in of Militarira armor plating. In less than 10 seconds, when she kicked the section, it fell inward with a resounding clang. This is absurd, Vortex sputtered. There must be some malfunction in the bunker's defenses. Perhaps the wall was already compromised. Check the other team's feeds, I said, my voice distant even to my own ears. The Vexians were using shape charges to breach their wall. The Craxians were pounding through with pneumatic rams. Everyone else was still working on getting past the outer defenses. Only Maya was already inside the interior. Feeds showed her moving through corridors with purpose, her sword held low and ready. Security drones emerged from a loves, and she dispatched them with cuts that seemed to defy physics. The blade passed through energy shields without triggering them, sliced through armor without generating heat signatures, and moved with a speed that suggested it weighed nothing despite its obvious solid construction. She's heading for the central vault, I reported, tracking her progress on the tactical overlay. At this rate she'll reach it in 2 minutes. Impossible, Vortex snapped. The vault is behind 3 separate security checkpoints, each requiring either explosive breaching or advanced hacking protocols. She has neither. We watched as Maya approached the first checkpoint, a massive blast door controlled by a quantum encrypted locking mechanism. She didn't even pause. The sword came up and she drove it straight into the locking panel. The glow intensified, and I swear I saw the light spread through the door's internal mechanisms like living roots. The blast door shuddered, then groaned open. That's not possible, whispered the Talaxian minister. Quantum encryption can't be bypassed by physical force. The second checkpoint featured a laser grid, invisible death waiting for anyone foolish enough to pass through. Maya held her sword horizontally and spun it slowly in front of her. The glow expanded, forming a shield of that impossible light, and she walked straight through. The lasers bent around her, or maybe through her. The camera feeds couldn't seem to decide. The third checkpoint was a kill corridor, automated turrets covering every centimeter of space with overlapping fire. There was no way through, no species in. The galaxy could survive that gauntlet without heavy shields or teleportation. Technology. Maya sheathed her sword. What is she doing now? Quilnex asked. She closed her eyes, placed both hands on the sword's hilt while it rested on her back, and took a deep breath. The glow didn't diminish. If anything, it grew brighter, spreading from the sword to her body, outlining her form in that reality-defying luminescence. Then she moved. I can't adequately describe what happened next. My optical sensors captured it, recorded every fraction of a second, but my brain refused to process it as something that actually occurred in normal space-time. Maya became a blur, a streak of light that traversed the kill corridor faster than the turrets could track. Energy bolts fired at empty air, hitting nothing but walls. In less than a second, she stood on the other side, unharmed, not even breathing hard. The vault door loomed before her, a solid slab of composite materials designed to withstand orbital bombardment. The other teams were still working through the outer sections of the bunker, fighting their way forward with conventional tactics and conventional weapons. Maya drew her sword one final time. The glow reached a crescendo, and I realized something that made my ichor run cold. The patterns on the sword weren't just circuitry, they were writing glyphs in a language that predated spaceflight, maybe predated civilization itself, and as they lit up in sequence, I understood with horrible clarity that this wasn't advanced technology. It was something older, something that existed before technology, something that made technology look like a child's toy. Maya raised the blade above her head, and the light became almost too bright to look at directly. She brought it down in a single decisive strike. The vault door didn't just open. It ceased to exist. One moment it was there, solid and impenetrable. The next moment there was only a doorway, as if the door had never been. She stepped through and retrieved the data core from its pedestal. Mission complete. Total elapsed time from insertion to objective secured, 7 minutes 43 seconds. The council chamber sat in stunned silence. Maya's voice crackled over the comm system, calm and professional. Tours to command. Objective secured, ready for extraction. Commander Vortech stood frozen at the podium, his scales having lost their lustrous sheen. How he finally managed. How did you do that? The camera feed showed Maya's face, and that same not quite friendly smile played across her features. I told you, Commander, sometimes the old ways work just fine, but that's impossible. That technology, if it even is technology, shouldn't exist. Where did you get that sword? Maya's smile widened slightly. This found it in my grandmother's attic. Actually, she said it's been in the family for about 12,000 years, give or take a century. We're not really sure. Records get fuzzy when you go back that far. 12,000 years. I heard myself say humans were barely agrarian at that point. You didn't have writing systems, let alone weapons capable of molecular manipulation or whatever that is. Yeah, Maya said, examining the blade almost fondly. Funny thing about that, turns out human history is a bit more complicated than we let on. There were civilizations before the ones you read about in history books, really old civilizations, the kind that knew things were only starting to remember. She sheathed the sword, and the glow faded, leaving only what appeared to be An ordinary, if well-crafted, blade. My grandmother called it a Titan killer. Said my ancestors used weapons like this during the First War, back when things that weren't quite animals and weren't quite gods walked the earth. She also said I'd know when it was time to use it again. The First War wheezed. Quillnecks, that's mythology, human creation stories. Is it though? Maya asked, because this sword seems pretty real to me, and unless I'm mistaken, it just outperformed every piece of advanced technology in this demonstration. Vortech's mouth opened and closed several times before any sound emerged. This changes everything. If humans have access to pre-technological capabilities that exceed our current understanding, we need to reevaluate their position in the Federation. We need to study that weapon. We need to understand. No, the single word cut through the commander's rambling like in ancient sword through Duralloy. Maya's expression hardened. This isn't technology you can study or replicate. It's not something you can mass-reduce or weaponize. These tools, these gifts from whatever our ancestors were, they only work for those who carry the old blood. And even then, only when they're truly needed. You wanted to see what humanity could contribute to the galaxy, fine. You've seen it. But you don't get to dissect it, catalog it, or turn it into another item in your arsenal. That's not how this works. Vortech growled. The Federation has protocols for integrating new technologies. You can't simply refuse to share. Watch me. The standoff lasted for several heartbeats. Then from the observation pods, Ambassador Threll of the Athathuran Collective spoke up. Her kind were among the oldest species in the Federation, and her voice carried weight. Commander Vortech, I suggest you let this matter rest. My people have myths too, stories from when we first ventured into space millennia ago. Stories of a young species on a yellow star world, beings who fought with weapons that predated the concept of weapons. We thought they were legends, cautionary tales about pride and assumption. Perhaps we were wrong. She fixed her crystalline eyes on Maya's image. Tell me, Lieutenant Torres, your grandmother's stories. What happened to the Titans? Maya was quiet. For a moment, when she spoke, her voice was soft, almost sad. They died or went to sleep or returned to whatever void spawned them. Depends on which story you believe, but the weapons remained, passed down through families chosen to keep watch just in case the Titans ever came back. And have they? THRL asked. Come back? Not yet, Maya said, but something's changing. Can't you feel it? That's why I brought the sword. That's why it woke up today, grandmother said. It would know when it was needed, that it would call to whoever carried it when the time came. 3 nights ago, I started dreaming about it, dreams of fire and something massive moving in the dark between stars. When I picked up the blade, it sang. First time in my life I've heard it make a sound. The chamber had gone from shocked silence to terrified silence, because if there was one thing worse than discovering humans had access to incomprehensible ancient power, it was the implication that they might need to use it. What? I found myself asking. What did you see in the dreams? What's coming? Maya turned to look directly at the camera as if she could see through it, to meet my eyes across the vastness of space. Something old, older than the Federation, older than most species. Something that makes the ancient human weapons seem reasonable by comparison. And it's hungry. Before anyone could respond, the alert klaxons began to wail, the orbital sensors around Tertius 9 lit up like a festival display, except instead of celebration, they screamed warnings of spatial anomalies, gravity distortions, and energy readings that made absolutely no sense. Every screen in the council chamber flickered, then refocused on the external cameras pointed at the moon's surface. Something was tearing through reality itself. The tear started small, a puncture in space that bled darkness, but it expanded rapidly, spreading like a wound across the fabric of existence. And through that wound, something emerged. I have spent 3 centuries analyzing threats, categorizing dangers, and preparing defensive strategies. Nothing in my experience prepared me for what crawled through that rift. It was massive, easily the size of a capital ship, but it wasn't technological, wasn't biological either, not in any way our sciences could define. The thing had too many limbs, or maybe not enough shapes that hurt to perceive directly, geometry that refused to stay consistent. One moment it appeared solid as stone, the next it flickered like flame, then flowed like liquid shadow. Titan, Maya whispered, and even through the calm link I heard the reverence and terror in her voice. The creature, for lack of a better term, touched down on Tertius 9 with earth-shaking force, where its appendages made contact. The rocky surface didn't just crack, it transformed, turning crystalline and then dissolving into vapor, as if the moon itself couldn't decide how to react to this impossibility. All teams evacuate immediately, Vortash shouted, his earlier arrogance replaced by pure survival instinct. Get to the drop ships now. The tactical feeds showed chaos. The Vexian team tried to maintain formation while retreating, but their sophisticated sensors were going haywire, unable to get consistent readings on the entity. The Craxians opened fire, their plasma weapons striking the Titan's bulk and achieving absolutely nothing. The energy simply vanished, absorbed or redirected, or maybe never reaching their target. The first place, the Quilly hive mind scattered, their unified consciousness fragmenting under the psychic pressure radiating from the creature. 40 individuals became 40 separate, terrified beings running in different directions. Only Maya stood still. Lieutenant Tors, you need to move, I found myself saying, though she couldn't hear me, but she could hear Vortash, who was repeating the same order with increasing desperation. Negative, Maya replied, her hand already on her sword's grip. This is what I came here for, what the blade woke up for. Everyone else needs to leave now. You can't fight that thing alone. Bordage protested, I'm not alone, I have this. She drew the sword and it blazed to life, that otherworldly glow, now seeming like a small star against the darkness radiating from the Titan. And I have 12,000 years of ancestors who learned how to kill these things. Trust me, Commander, I know what I'm doing. This is insane. Quillnex breathed beside me. She's going to die, maybe, I said, slowly, unable to look away from that screen. But look at her stance, look at how she's moving. That's not fear, that's recognition. Maya advanced toward the Titan with measured steps, her sword held in a guard position. I didn't recognize the creature noticed her, and though it had nothing resembling conventional eyes, I felt its attention shift, focusing on this tiny human with her glowing blade. It roared. The sound wasn't audible through the vacuum of space, but every sensor in the Observation Fleet registered it not as sound waves but as something else, a vibration that traveled through dimensions we didn't have names for. Hull plates buckled, energy shields flickered, several delegates in the council chamber collapsed, their sensory organs overwhelmed by the mere echo of that roar. Maya planted her feet and roared back. This time the sound was audible, transmitted through her suit's external speakers. It was wordless, primal, a challenge that transcended language, and somehow impossibly the sword's glow intensified in response. Pulsing in time with her voice, the Titan moved with speed that defied its size, one of its shifting appendages sweeping toward Maya like a falling mountain. She didn't dodge, she stepped forward and swung her blade upward. Collision should have obliterated her. Instead, her sword met that impossible limb and cut through, not easily, not like the turrets and doors before. This took effort. I could see Maya straining her entire body behind the strike, but the blad's edge met the Titan's substance and found purchase. Severed appendage fell away, dissolving into mist before it hit the ground. Titan recoiled, and if a thing like that could express surprise, it did so now. It had expected an easy kill, a minor inconvenience to swat aside. Instead, it had found something that could hurt it. Impossible, the Trialaxian minister gasped. That entity exists partially outside normal space. Physical weapons shouldn't be able to touch it. Her sword isn't exactly physical, though, is it? Ambassador THRL observed. Look at the energy readings. It's not generating power, it's translating it, channeling something from the wielder into a form that can affect targets across multiple dimensional layers. Whoever forged that weapon understood physics we haven't even theorized yet. Maya pressed her advantage, moving in close where the Titan's massive bulk became a disadvantage. Her blade work was poetry, each strike precisely placed, cutting away at appendages and what might have been sensory organs. The Titan thrashed, its movements creating shock waves that rippled across the moon's surface, but it was learning, adapting. Its form began to shift more rapidly, becoming less solid, harder to strike. One moment Maya's sword would cut deep. Next, it would pass through empty space, where her target had been an instant before. The creature was testing her, figuring out the patterns of her attacks. She's losing ground, Vortesh noted, and he was right. Maya was being driven back, forced to defend rather than attack. The Titan's remaining appendages moved in coordinated strikes, forcing her to parry and dodge with increasing desperation. Then the creature did something I'll never forget. It opened its mouth, or created a mouth, a gaping void in its center mass that leaked darkness. From that void emerged sound again, but this time it formed words spoken in a language that predated any living tongue, but that the translation matrix somehow rendered intelligible. Child of the old blood, why do you oppose me? Your kind sealed the gates, pushed us beyond the margins of your reality. We hunger, we have always hungered. Your ancestors knew this. They made a choice, sacrificing their power to imprison us. Why maintain their mistake? Maya didn't stop moving, circling the creature, looking for an opening. Because she panted, they weren't wrong. You don't want to coexist, you want to consume. That's all you've ever wanted. And your kind doesn't consume. The Titan's laugh was like grinding glaciers. You devour, worlds transform ecosystems, multiply endlessly across. The stars, the only difference between us is that we're honest about our nature. The difference, Maya snapped, is that we can choose, we can be better. You're just Hunter wearing a shape. She lunged forward, her sword blazing brighter than before, and drove the blade deep into what approximated the Titan's core. The glow spread from the impact point, those ancient circuits activating in sequence, and the creature shrieked, not in pain exactly, but in something like recognition, or perhaps remembrance. You bear the mark, it said, its form wavering, the binding mark, the promise written in steel and will. You are bound to stand against us as your ancestors stood. This is not battle, this is ritual, obligation carved into your very genetics. Call it what you want, Maya growled, twisting the blade. I call it doing my job. The Titan's form began to collapse inward, imploding around the sword's light, but in its death throes, it lashed out one final time. An appendage, more shadow than substance, wrapped around Maya and lifted her off the ground. The sword remained buried, the creature's core, but Maya was separated from it, held high as the Titan squeezed. We are not the last, it whispered. The seals weaken, the old gates crack. More of us will come, and eventually you children will run out of warriors bearing the ancient marks. Then finally we feast. Maya's suit began to crack under the pressure. Warning lights flashed across my screens as her vital signs spiked into critical ranges. She couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't reach her weapon, but she could speak. What came from her lips wasn't English or any modern human language. It was older, harsher syllables that seemed to have weight and texture. Later analysis would suggest it was Proto-Indo-European, or something even more ancient, a mother tongue from which all others descended. But in the moment, it didn't matter what language it was a command, an invocation, a word of power. The sword answered. It tore free from the Titan's body of its own accord, flying through the air like a missile, and slammed into Maya's outstretched hand. The moment her fingers closed around the grip, the glow exploded outward in a sphere of light that consumed everything within 50 m. When the glare faded, the Titan was gone, not dead, not destroyed, but banished, sent back through the rift. It had emerged from the tear in space, sealed itself, reality knitting back together with visible reluctance, and Maya dropped to the ground in a heap. Medical team to the surface now, Vortash ordered, his voice shaking. Get her stabilized and back to the ship. The emergency teams reached Maya within minutes, finding her battered but alive, her suit compromised but her body intact. The sword lay beside her, looking once again like nothing more than an old blade, its glow extinguished, its purpose fulfilled. For now, they brought her back to the fleet, where the best medical technicians in 3 sectors worked to patch her wounds while they operated. The council chamber remained in session, everyone grappling with what we'd witnessed. We need to talk about this, Bordage said. Finally, his earlier hostility replaced by something like respect, or maybe fear. We need to understand what humanity has access to, how many of these weapons exist, how many people can use them. Ambassador THRL rose from her observation pod, her ancient form moving with deliberate grace. Commander, I suggest you ask different questions. Not how many weapons, but how many Titans. Not how many warriors, but how long until the seals fail completely. The humans didn't share this information. Because they were hiding strength, they were hiding responsibility. A burden they've carried alone for 12 millennia. She gestured toward the medical bay. Feeds showing Maya's unconscious form. That young woman just fought a battle. That would have required a fleet-level response from any of our militaries. And she did it alone because her grandmother's grandmother's grandmother was taught to stand watch. How many generations of humans have lived and died keeping things like that Titan away from the rest of us? How many are still standing watch right now in places we don't monitor, fighting threats we never see? The silence that followed was profound and uncomfortable. I found myself reviewing the historical data on human expansion into space. They'd been cautious, almost reluctant to leave their home system initially. We'd attributed it to primitive technology or cultural factors, but what if they'd been checking first, making sure they weren't spreading the same problem to the stars that they'd been fighting on Earth? 3 days later, Maya was released from medical care. Her body had healed with surprising speed, another gift, perhaps, of that old blood she'd mentioned. She was scheduled to address the council before returning to Earth. I made sure to be present in the observation gallery when she arrived. She looked different now, not physically, though the medical treatments had erased the visible damage from her fight. The difference was in how everyone else looked at her. The mockery was gone, replaced by weariness, curiosity, and in some cases, gratitude. Maya took the podium with the same confidence she'd shown before, but this time no one was laughing. I owe you all an apology, she began, her voice steady, not for keeping secrets that was necessary, but for letting you believe humanity was weak. We're not. We're just tired. My people have been fighting the oldest war in existence for so long that we forgot it was remarkable. We thought everyone knew. We thought every species had their own version of the struggle. She paused, her hand unconsciously moving to the sword strapped at her side. Turns out we were unique in that regard. Lucky us, but what happened on Tursus 9 was a warning. The Titan was right. The barriers are weakening. More will come, and when they do, we're going to need help. All of us together, combining human knowledge of how to fight these things with your technology, your numbers, your resources. Vortash stepped forward. You want to form an alliance specifically to combat these Titans? I want to survive, Commander. So should you. Because the next time a rift opens, it might not be over a barren moon. It might be over a populated world. Your world, my world, anyone's world. And I've got maybe 40 more years of fighting in me before I'm too old to lift the sword. We need to prepare others, train them, find humans who carry the mark, and teach them the old ways before it's too late. How many of your kind can do what you did? I found myself asking, my voice amplified through the chamber's speakers. Maya met my eyes across the distance. Honestly, I don't know. The families who kept the vigil scattered across Earth centuries ago. Some died out, some forgot their purpose. My grandmother knew of maybe 50 bloodlines that still maintain the traditions. But bloodline isn't everything. The mark can waken anyone with the potential, given the right circumstances and the right teacher. Could be thousands who don't even know they carry it. Could be dozens. We need to find out. She straightened, addressing the full council. So here's my proposal. Humanity joins the Federation fully. No more probationary status. In exchange, we share what we know about the Titans, train anyone with the potential to fight them, and coordinate a galaxy-wide early warning system. The next rift that opens will be ready, all of us. Debate lasted for hours, arguments about sovereignty, about the dangers of human weapons in the wrong hands, about the very nature of reality and what we'd thought we understood about it, but in the end, the decision was unanimous. The treaty was signed at sunset on Earth, in a meadow in what Maya called the Carpathian Mountains. She said it was fitting, as that land had seen more Titan fights than anywhere else in human history. The ground there still bore scars that geologists couldn't explain, wounds in the earth that ran deeper than any natural formation. As I watched Maya demonstrate sword techniques to a mixed group of human recruits and curious alien observers, I reflected on how thoroughly wrong I'd been, not just about humans but about the universe itself. We'd thought we were sophisticated, advanced masters of technology and reason. Turned out we were children playing in a safe room, while others stood guard at the door, fighting monsters we'd never imagined existed. Maya caught me watching and walked over, her sword once again dormant on her back. Thank you, she said simply, for what I mocked you, along with everyone else, for being willing to learn, for asking questions instead of just demanding answers, for understanding that sometimes the old ways and the new ways need each other. She smiled, and this time it was genuinely warm. Besides your analysis of Titan movement patterns in the battle report was brilliant. You saw things I missed because I was too busy, not dying. I felt my scales flush with pleased embarrassment. I simply observed and recorded. You did the actual fighting, and now we'll do it together. You with your sensors and tactical genius, me with my ancient sword and questionable life choices. The whole galaxy working as one should be. Interesting, she was right about that. Over the following cycles, the Titan Defense Initiative became the most important program in Federation history. We found 63 humans who could activate the old weapons, plus 17 aliens from ancient species who, it turned out, had their own forgotten traditions. Athethurans remembered rituals. The Trialaxians had crystalline focuses that predated their civilization. Even the Craxians discovered cave paintings depicting their ancestors fighting things that matched Titan descriptions. We weren't alone in this after all. We just all forgotten separately. The rifts kept opening, sometimes weekly, sometimes months apart, but now when they did, we were ready. Teams of warriors bearing impossible weapons, backed by fleets with sensors tuned to detect dimensional tiers, supported by scientists working to understand and reinforce the ancient seals. And at the center of it all, Maya Torres, the human who'd been mocked for bringing a sword to a plasma fight, who'd proven that sometimes the most ridiculous solution is the only one that works. I still keep the recording from that first demonstration, the moment when everything changed. Sometimes when I'm analyzing data or preparing reports, I play it back, watch Maya stand alone before the council, endure their laughter and prove them catastrophically wrong. It reminds me to never assume, never underestimate, never mock what I don't understand. Because somewhere in the universe, someone might just be standing guard with an ancient weapon and the knowledge to use it, protecting everyone else from nightmares they can't even imagine, and that someone deserves respect, not ridicule, that someone might just save us.